Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video episode on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here once again today at the Rock Island Auction House. I'm taking a look at some of the guns that are coming up for sale in their September of 2015 premiere auction. And one of the guns here, which I've never actually had the chance to look at in person before, is this Belgian Army Trials rifle. This is a model of 1888 Liegeoise. Didn't end up in commercial service anywhere. They didn't have any commercial sales anywhere. It didn't win the trials. It didn't even come close to winning the trials. But it's a really funky looking gun, an unusual action to the gun as well, and definitely wanted to take a look at it. So the Belgian Army was, like most armies around this era, looking for a new small bore, smokeless powder, modern military repeating rifle. Now they ended up adopting the 1889 Mauser. That is the Mauser with a single stack magazine coming out through the bottom of the receiver. This was kind of at the beginning of Mauser's just, frankly, utter dominance of the military rifle marketplace. Well, these guys made an attempt to compete. They weren't successful, but they sure made an interesting gun. So let me go ahead and bring the camera back here. Let's take a closer look at how this thing works and what's weird about it. All right, I have not been able to find any trials reports on this rifle, so all I can do for you guys is pull it apart and see what we can learn just from looking at it. Of course, obvious characteristic, the bolt handle sticking out the top instead of coming off the side. That's actually somewhat reminiscent of the Dreißi needle rifles, although it doesn't function in any way similarly. Basically, crank that back, pull the bolt open to cycle the weapon. Now we will notice that the magazine well is open at the bottom here, and if we look down inside the magazine well, we can see this spring. This tells us that the rifle used an end block clip. You would put it in, and when the last round was chambered, the empty clip would fall out the bottom of the rifle. That's a Mannlicher style system, very common around the 1880s, early 1890s. Bunch of different rifles used it. Ultimately, the US M1 Garand used a variation on that system. Now, as always, we do have a button, or as usual, here in the front of the trigger guard. That serves to allow you to release a partial clip. If we look in the back of the action here, you can see there are a pair of hooks right down in there. So those two hooks hold the top of the clip. This clearly used a proprietary clip. The dimensions wouldn't fit any standard clip I am aware of. Caliber-wise, this is in 8mm, although I don't know what type of 8mm. All we can do is measure the bore. I don't have the equipment to do a chamber cast here. So, next thing, actually, I should show you the safety, which is unusual. The safety is actually this right here. When I push that down, the rifle is safed. That locks the trigger in place. When you pull it up, the rifle is ready to fire. This bit sticking out the back is the back end of your striker component, so having that out does tell you that the rifle is ready to fire. When we dry fire it, which I'll just do once, that disappears in. Now you know that the rifle is no longer cocked. This rolling piece here, which one would naturally assume to be the safety, this is actually the bolt stop. So if I want to take the bolt out, which I do, I push this forward like so, and then the bolt handle on this is very stiff when you're recocking the spring. Now the bolt just lifts right out of the gun. Doesn't really look like any typical bolt that we're used to seeing. A lot of interesting little features here. So first off, this circular piece, these are our locking lugs. And this is clearly attached directly to the bolt handle. So when you push the bolt forward to this stop, these two big sort of shark fin looking lugs rotate up and they lock into recesses in the receiver. You can see one of those recesses right there and the other one right there. So those are the two locking lugs. Our trigger here in the action is completely loose. The spring tensioning it is actually in the bolt itself. So when you pull the trigger, it simply pushes this component up. That'll be important in a moment. Now, I don't want to dry fire this thing outside of the rifle because I suspect it would be the springs would be very stiff to try and recock it. But what happens when you pull the trigger is the trigger pushes up right on this tongue. That pushes this the opposite direction and releases the striker to go forward. So we have a very long striker and firing pin assembly all the way out here to our bolt face. So this probably used a rimmed cartridge. The bolt face being completely flat, doesn't have any enclosure around it. A little bit reminiscent of a Lee Enfield bolt face. Extractor is here at the bottom, and it looks like it's mechanically actuated. It's got a pivot point right out here. That is pretty much all there is that I can determine from the outside of the bolt here. We do have a couple serial number 2 markings on a couple of the components. The rifle itself does not appear to have any serial number. Interesting to note, there are no markings of any kind on the receiver crest here, or where there would be a crest. We also have no markings on the rear sight. So these all suggest this was an experimental pre-production rifle. There are a couple of markings on the side of the receiver. We have System Engh, that would be the inventor, brevet patent, model 1888. So Engh there would be the inventor, the guy who had the design patented. We've got nothing down on the trigger guard. And then over on the left side, we have the manufacturer's name, which is Liegeoise. Clearly a military rifle, as we can tell from the bayonet lug on it, and of course the cleaning rod in the side of the stock, which is a somewhat unusual and interesting feature. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you would like to do your own rifle testing and compare this to an 1889 Belgian Mauser, you can. It is, of course, up for sale, as is everything here at Rock Island. So if you take a look at the link in the description text below, that will take you to Rock Island's catalog page on the rifle, and check out their pictures, create an account, place a bid online, or come down here in person. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.